The problem with those challenges that ended up breaking us was they would never get better had we done more business. The more people that come in, the more water you use, the more burgers you sell, the more gas you use. Like, it didn't matter what we did or how many people we fed or how many people we sat or how many, glasses of wine we sold in the back. It wouldn't have changed.
This is Copper and Heat, the podcast exploring the unspoken rules and traditions of restaurant kitchens. I'm Katie Osuna. And this...
Hi, Katie. How are you?
Hey, Katie. How's it going?
Can you hear us okay?
...is Alex McCreary and Jenny Goodman.
Yeah, hi. I'm Jenny Goodman. I'm a co-founder of Tillet NYC.
And I'm Alex McCreary, and also a co-founder of Tillet NYC.
Tillet is a chef and restaurant workwear brand with all these high-quality, modern, and stylish uniforms for industry folks. Alex and Jenny started the brand in 2012. They were both originally from the industry, Alex a chef who'd done private chefing and opened a place, and Jenny was front of house. Before they started a really successful workwear brand, though, they opened a restaurant in Brooklyn called Goods. But the thing about Goods is that it failed. So in this episode, I'm talking with Jenny and Alex about what happened to Goods to make it go so wrong, and what they learned from that experience.
Jenny's brother lived across the street from an empty lot that was in, soon to become a very prime area of Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And so he quickly snatched up a lease on the lot and then started to work backwards to figure out what him and his business partner would do with it. And when they decided to do a restaurant, they came to me to do the cooking side, right? Because I was in the family and knew that, had that strength and was ready for it. And so we worked our way through how we were going to build our dream restaurant, basically.
They snatched up the lot as quickly as possible and started working backwards from there. But they soon realized that building on it was not going to be as simple as they thought, because
the lot rested above a subway terminal,
which meant they couldn't actually dig to build a foundation for a building without going through a whole bunch of extra permitting and bureaucracy. Not wanting to do that, they decided to do something with a little less infrastructure.
We had this plan to do a shipping container, like a stack of 6 shipping containers with a courtyard in the middle of it. And that idea became fairly quickly nixed when we realized how expensive that would be.
Since that wasn't going to work, and they still didn't want to invest too much time and money, they decided to go an even less permanent route.
We bought, I think it was a 1957 Spartan, which is, big, beautiful, Airstreamy looking silver beast. There's a separate kind of license that you can have in New York, which is much easier to attain for a food truck, is one that is actually sitting on your own property. So you don't drive around the city, you don't have to deal with any of the other things, and it's much easier to get one. You can just, go through the process.
That seemed like the right way to go. Less permits, less infrastructure, less time and money. And from there, their project went pretty quickly.
So we probably took a lease on space sometime in 2009. I don't remember exactly.
It took 9 months to build the trailer.
And then we opened the doors.
They opened in the spring of 2010.
And we closed just before Christmas.
And by Christmas of 2010, they were closed. All in all, the whole process from getting the lease to closing the restaurant didn't take more than 18 months.
I like to say we're the fastest restaurateurs.
A good spin on it.
On the block.
We're the fastest restaurateurs on the block. Where the truck was on the corner of Metropolitan and Lorimer in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and there wasn't a ton of stuff there. Specifically, not what we were doing, which was like high quality, sort of fast casual food. And there was really just like sit down restaurants or like your neighborhood bodega because it was an up and coming area. So we were an affordable price point, relatively fast, and it was a cool looking, truck and like, oh, who doesn't love an outside patio? So the initial reception was super warm.
We had put together a good team that we were happy with. We got a decent amount of good press coverage without having a PR team. We had, local support, and we had a line outside the door. In a lot of ways, that blinded us to realizing that there was a problem faster.
They were so busy that not only did they not realize they had a problem until it was too late, but it also just made the problems worse and worse.
You always think that like the hardest part of opening a restaurant and being successful is getting people to come in and to be busy, right? And in this case, that was not the hardest part. I mean, that's certainly something that we had worked hard on, but because we knew wine, we knew beverage, we knew how to sell that, we knew good food, and people loved the food. We had great coffee. Like, people loved all of those components. But that's 100% not the whole program.
The biggest problems they ran into all came back to running what was essentially a mobile business, even though it wasn't actually moving.
There was no plumbing in the lot. There was no gas in the lot. Those two things were, it was like, okay, well, we can work around that, right? We can, we get a giant wastewater tank and we have a freshwater tank above the truck, and we bring water in, we bring water out. We get propane, just the way you would have with a mobile food truck, and you bring gas in, you have empty tanks go out. But that is also very, very expensive. And when you're, deciding these things on the fly as a reaction to something not working, and then just going with it and, trying to work your way around it after you've committed to this, doesn't always work.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons learned there. I mean, sometimes in business, I think like there's opportunities that present themselves and you're like, I've always wanted to do this. It's a great opportunity. But then, we should have had a plan from the beginning, I think, is where we fell short. And then I think in business, again, things don't always go the way that we want them to go at Tillet, and you have to pivot slightly, or with any business, you have to pivot slightly, but there's pivoting slightly and then having to like reverse engineer something to make it work for a business decision that you made when you probably shouldn't have made that decision. And I think that's really what we've learned.
I think we saw an opportunity, we jumped on it, and then we just like started finding ways to make things work. And to be fair, Jenny's brother had a couple of recent businesses and had a lot of success working in that way.
And his businesses were very different than the hospitality industry too, because there's different costs in this industry that you don't have when you're running a different kind of business. We didn't plan for that, and we didn't have enough cash reserves in the bank to like, get to that 9-month break even point where most people, try to get to in their first year of business. So that was just, we didn't have that much cash available. And it was poor planning on that side too.
The main problem was that they never had a set plan before they started. They were looking just a few weeks ahead, trying things out in the hopes that it would solve the most immediate problem. In the meantime, they were burning through cash without any idea of how much they needed coming in order to balance the money going out.
The problem with those challenges that ended up breaking us was they would never get better had we done more business. The more people that come in, the more water you use, the more burgers you sell, the more gas you use. Like, it didn't matter what we did or how many people we fed or how many people we sat or how many, glasses of wine we sold in the back. It wouldn't have changed.
So a few months into owning what was supposed to be their dream restaurant, they were trying to keep up with demand while also trying to patch holes as they lost money to their operating costs. And that's where it got really tricky, having conversations with employees, vendors, and partners about money. And when your business partners are also your family and things aren't going well, the conversations get even harder. In the summer and fall of 2010, Goods was losing money under a huge burden of operational costs. And as that gap between money coming in and money going out got larger and larger, the owners had to put in more money. Without any other investors or capital, that meant Jenny's brother and his business partner, plus Jenny and Alex. What was the investment or funding model for goods?
The funding model was how much cash is in your pocket and how much cash is in your pocket.
Yeah.
All right, give it all to us.
We drained our
I
savings.
think we all started with a particular amount. I think Jenny's brother and his partner were the bigger share. They put a big chunk of money in, and we put in everything that we had, and we also balanced, sweat
Some
equity.
sweat equity,
I was running the kitchen every day. And then as it came time for more, we tried to keep that percentage break going right? So if they were going to put in 70% and we needed another 10 grand, then we had to cough up 3 grand at that time. So otherwise we would get diluted a little bit. And so we tried to stick with that. And then at the end, it was like, I'm not putting any more money in. And it's like, oh, well, I've got this much money in my pocket. Like, I'll literally take this money out of my pocket and give it to you. And yeah, I mean, that's definitely the memories that I try to block out is the group of us, sort of all leaning on each other to put more money in.
Right.
And we were all like stretched. We were tired. We've been trying to make this thing work in every different kind of way. And again, we felt like we were being received well and we were busy. And so it was like, how the hell is this not really working? And why do I have to put more money in? It should be, we should at least be doing okay at the moment. And I do remember that those conversations were really, really hard. And obviously that came to a head when, all of us said, we're not putting any more money in. We're done.
Eventually, they had to call it. And Jenny was the one who stepped up to spearhead that conversation.
It was like my future husband and my brother. So I really don't think I had much of a choice. I didn't see a way out of it. I think that except for just, hey, look, let's just cut the losses. It was easier to walk away in some sense. And I think there's this thing in business where it's like, oh, we've sunk this much money. It's we call it the sunk cost fallacy. And, so keep on putting in more money to make it work. But at some point you have to say it's a fallacy. It's never going to work. So just walk away.
So they did.
The whole process was pretty tough for me. And I don't talk about that side of it a lot, but it's like I spent my whole career building up to opening a restaurant, and to see it just kind of go down the tubes so quickly over a project like this, which in the end ended up being, this fast casual breakfast joint. And it was just like, it was pretty crushing, so it's hard and it's impressive to see other people that bounce up and do things, quickly, because that was a pretty big hit for me to have your career end in such an abrupt way.
At the time, it was super painful. There was a lot of tears shed. We closed right before Christmas, and I remember crying the whole time at Christmas that year, because it's embarrassing. You're like, oh my God, we tried this thing and it didn't work, and all of our friends and family have come out to support us, and it's like you're open and closed in a minute. So I think there's a lot of shame and embarrassment when you fail at something, but I also think there's something to be said for celebrating second acts and bouncing back really quickly. And, and I think as long as you're a good person and you bounce back, people will continue to support you, and it's okay to talk about those failures. But while it's all happening, it sucks. And I do feel less ashamed of sharing a failure story, because I have been through it. And I think that we live in this glossy age of, we only put our best selves forward on Instagram and on, on social media and on whatever platform you're sharing, but that isn't always the case. You don't necessarily learn through all those glossy images.
It's also easier when you've rebounded and are doing well to be able to talk about your previous failures.
That's true too.
It would be a lot harder if we were, still back as a line cook or something 10 years later, and your dream had washed away.
So in 2011, Alex went back to private chefing, and Jenny had started a career in pharmaceuticals. In the end, one of Jenny's brothers found a buyer for goods, and they were able to get a little bit of money back.
One of my brother's business partners found a buyer, and they, bought the business, again, at a loss. So we didn't recoup all of our investment, or even close to all of the investment, not to mention all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it. But we did, come out with a little bit of capital back, and we were fortunate to have sold the business. And now there is a restaurant that invested in infrastructure and getting the city permits, and they now have like real running water and plumbing, and they've been operating for probably like 7 or 8 years. If we had done careful planning and had said, okay, we're going to get a ton of capital and we're going to be able to, go through the city permitting process, then maybe it would have been a different story, because it was possible to have a successful restaurant at that location, just not the way that we were doing it at the time.
Jenny and Alex were quick to jump back into a project of their own, until it came pretty quickly after the end of Goods.
I was doing private, so the idea was born out of the fact that I was working in someone's home. They wanted me to wear a uniform, and I felt that the uniforms that were available did not make me feel good. And I was working for a very high-profile family and making a good amount of money as a chef. And I wanted to feel cool. I wanted to feel like I was proud to be a chef. And everybody that you told, oh, I'm a chef, they're like, oh, wow, it's such a cool job. And you're like, well, I look like a damn clown. Like, why do these clothes not reflect that idea and the way that I should feel about my job? And when we started looking, nobody was doing it. It was truly just a commodity product. And probably by the summer of 2011, we were testing our first sort of samples. I was running and doing sewing lessons in between lunch and dinner shifts, and we toyed with it until we officially launched, which was November of 12.
So between the summer of 2011 and November in 2012, they did everything to build a business that they had not done with Goods.
You always say, that there's always lessons to be learned, right, from failure. But in this case, it was, 100% true. Like we did our diligence on planning. We were very, very risk averse and, invested as little money as possible as we could to sort of test the idea. And I think without Goods, we wouldn't have been successful necessarily in the follow through and the ideation of what Till It is today.
They started with just 2 aprons, a pair of chef pants, and a chef shirt. Now, 7 years later, they have a bunch of different styles of pants, shirts, jackets, aprons, accessories, and they're proud of the fact that their staff have all come from restaurants. Early in 2019, they decided to add another thing to their plate, and this is how I first heard their story. They started a podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Opening Soon on Heritage Radio Network. We are your hosts. I'm Jenny Goodman.
And I'm Alex McCreary.
And if you are just tuning
Opening Soon takes you through all the ins and outs of opening and running a restaurant through interviews with some of the leading chefs, entrepreneurs, restaurateurs, and food business owners in the industry.
You didn't even realize until we were in the process of starting Till It in the e-com biz of how much info and how much support and how many great books on business leadership and entrepreneurship and accounting and all the different things that go into starting your e-com biz. When you go to, the local bookstore and there's aisles of business books, and then there's not a single one for restaurants. And yet there's tons and tons of restaurants, and everybody that is trying to open a restaurant, for the most part, has been working in restaurants for years. So they haven't been sitting in school or going to get their master's degree or any of those things necessarily. So they don't have that knowledge, and it's just not out there. And I think trying to sort of change that and play some little part in that, I think we try with Till It to, obviously, we're selling a product to the industry. So we try and through the other things that we do to give back to the industry in some way and to be part of it in sort of a cyclical way rather than just feeling like we're just taking from the industry. So that was important to us, is to try and not necessarily through our own experience, but through our own failure to talk to people who have done really, really great things and have them share. So it's not really it's not us sharing all this advice. It's us asking the right people to share their advice.
And I think one thing we've learned is that people are a great resource, but having somebody to go to in a consolidated fashion is sort of hard to find. So, one of the things that we hear over and over again is how do you get advice? Well, we just ask people. So I feel we felt like there wasn't a really good resource of this is us asking people from soup to nuts of how do you open a restaurant? And, what if you don't have access to a great lawyer at first? Like, can you hear some legal advice? Or what if you don't have great access to somebody in marketing and, marketing wasn't a strong part of your training? Here's a resource talking about restaurants. So that's really where Opening Soon came from, is that we just wanted it to be a good resource for the industry after we didn't have any.
No desire to open another restaurant?
I think there would be. I don't think I would do it again at this point. Do it for enjoyment, or I think that we would potentially jointly invest in someone that was doing something really amazing and fun. Again, not to make money, and we've talked about that this season on our podcast, was that most investors aren't in it to make a buck. They're making dividends, but mostly they're supporting something that they really like in their neighborhood. I could see that happening for us at some point. Yeah, I could definitely see
that too. I would invest in one. I don't think I would personally.
I still have the need for redemption left in there somewhere.
Alex talks about retiring and opening a pizza shop, so we'll see.
Taco shop.
A taco shop now?
Come on.
Oh, okay. Al's Pizza and Tacos coming at you. I don't know.
Pizza and tacos. You're off the team.
Just kidding.
Choose your partners.
I know. I'm out.
If you haven't listened to Opening Soon, I would highly recommend it. I'm linking to it in the show notes. If opening a restaurant or even just running a restaurant is your thing, it's incredibly helpful. Check it out. We have an episode about staging coming up later in the season, and I want to hear what you think about it. I know it's a really contentious subject right now, so send me some thoughts at hello@copperandheat.com. If you haven't already done it, hit that subscribe button in your podcast app. Then you can keep up with all of our new episode releases throughout the season. Also, if you could do me a little favor while you're there, leave us a review, please. It definitely helps us a lot. Overhead, the second season of Copper and Heat is produced by me, Katie Osuna, and Ricardo Osuna. Our story editor is Rachel Palmer. Head on over to Twitter or Instagram and find us at hello@copperandheat, or check out our website, copperandheat.com. All the music you hear is produced by us under the name Gamma Gardens. Check out other tracks on Instagram and SoundCloud. Thanks for listening.